Hello, good evening, and welcome to a reading weekly from the Bible. I'm Pastor Lou, and I serve here at the High Mountain Presbyterian Church as pastor. And on Tuesday nights and Wednesday mornings, I've made an effort and endeavor to read together with a few people from my congregation and from the community, actually. We have a planned read-through of the Bible, and it may not be like any Bible reading you've been to. We actually do read it, and we try to read it to see it, whatever we read, in the context of what was before, so we read it straight through. Our reading has taken us a few years, actually, but we give about an hour every Tuesday night for reading and then discussion. And ever since the end of COVID, we have been focusing on the Psalms. I started reading from the Psalms for comfort in the beginning of the isolation of COVID, and then we kept that as a continuing place to keep reading. Sometimes the language is very archaic. Sometimes it sounds like there's a lot of revenge among the people of the faithful, but the language we listen to, we take it for what it is. I think sometimes the language in the Psalms is more honest to how people are actually feeling than what we're willing to do, especially when we gather in places like church and we want to say nice things and we want to draw on the positive things. The Psalter is full of the truth about how the writer of the Psalm feels. And those feelings are presented to God. We're left to read them and then do with them what we must. There's a good place of identification for us if we want to identify with how life can make us feel. These are also times of war and of battle. These are like battlefield reporters talking about the experience. Oftentimes the writers are trying to project their feelings or what they have to say about life. They're overwriting it on the story of a king from Israel's history, David, who was thought of as the greatest king of all, God's king. And so the feelings of that king are investigated, they're documented, and so we try to explore it from its context, remembering always that it's important if we want to know what help the Bible may be to us in 2024, we need to understand its context, the time in which it was written, why the writers were writing what they were writing or saying what they were saying. And we hope to get at that somewhat by a kind of common sense conversation to explore some of those things. At times it may sound like we're questioning the Bible. We're mostly questioning the history of the interpretation of the Bible. And we also question a little bit, honestly, about the composition of the Bible. Many of these Psalms, while they're an overwrite into what might have been the author's imagination about what David was thinking or feeling, many of them were written long after King David lived and reigned. And we know that because there are clues in the words and the images that are given that tell us that. I always told my class, you know that you have to think differently about when the text is written if all of a sudden the author refers to a cell phone. And he says, I picked up my cell phone. Now, it doesn't say that ever, but linguists will tell you there are the equivalent of those kinds of dating phrases that tell us, no, this had to happen after Jerusalem was destroyed and long after King David was long gone and forgotten, because this word composition style did not exist in the time of David. Now that's a very simple summary of what critical reading of the scripture is. It's not to be criticizing the scripture, but it's to read it with a critical mind and not make assumptions that make us look very foolish. So, time is approaching. I don't have yet anyone to join me in the dialogue here tonight. and I think there will be some, although I know COVID has returned and reared its ugly head to some of my class members, and I'm sure we're going to be affected by some who are not able to attend. So, anyway, tonight, I'm going to, you'll sense I'm wasting time a little bit, waiting for the others to join, but we're going to be reading and thinking first tonight about Psalm 59. It's 18 verses. The title that I have in my commentary is Enemies Who Are Like Hungry Prowling Dogs. Okay, so we're going to wait just a little bit. I see somebody coming online at the present time, so that's good.
That's Melinda. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to hear your voice tonight.
Thank you. Nice to be heard. I'm commuting in from the office, so I'm going to be on mute and off video because I don't want to disturb the study, but I also don't want to miss the study.
Okay, that's fine. You know that.
I know.
We welcome you any way we can talk to you. There comes Debbie. So we'll know you're there, Melinda. Feel free to join.
I'll be here.
You can join in at any time. Just make your remarks, okay?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
All right, good. Hi, Debbie.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
No.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sorry to hear about Barbara getting sick.
Yeah, I caught it again. Oh my.
I know. I mean, how many times do you have to get this thing in order to say, okay, I'm done?
Yeah, I don't know. Also, I didn't say anything to her. I'm sure she's watching the news, but that hurricane is coming in. Like, you know, now Fort Myer area is in the cone of destruction. And I'm like, oh, I hope something happens to make it go someplace other than landfall, but
Yeah.
highly unlikely.
It's an interesting time to be in a class where we're trying to read the Bible. Because a lot of times when I have read the Bible in the past, my life is fairly simple. You know, the big dramas of life aren't often tangling me up. You know, I'm like, well, what do I do if the coffee shop I usually go to closes? You know, like that. Like,
Right.
you know, I've been working with a big disruption in my life because ever since I moved to Franklin Lakes, I've been taking my clothes to the same dry cleaner.
Yeah.
And we're friends, you know, I take my shirts there and get them just washed, and then they press them, and it's beautiful. And so 2 weeks ago I went in and he told me we're closing. And I was like, no, you can't close. This is a crisis of my life, a crisis.
There you go.
You know, and you try to bend the language, these deep and brutal languages of the Psalms, to these little tiny life crises, right? Mm-hmm. But wow, the last couple of weeks, what's confronting us is not small.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's the first time I've ever heard the prognosticators for the weather say there's a storm surge coming, and you will not survive it. Like,
Right.
if you're there, you're dead.
Yep.
And then hearing some of the superlatives, like they backed off a little bit from it, but yesterday in one weather channel I'm watching, it's not the one that's on television, but the commentator said the measure of this hurricane, the one that's coming now, they think has pushed Earth to its maximum. They don't think the Earth is capable of generating a storm with a lower center of pressure and higher winds than what this storm had at that time. And he used that phrase that he thought the Earth was up against its limits. I thought.
Scared?
I mean, I've never thought of that. I've never had that thought in my head. You know, does the Earth and all the science, does it live within the restraint of what it can actually do? I just, Anyway, yeah, it really scared me. I have a daughter that's down there in the, it's not,
That's right.
yeah, not in the western side cone of like destruction, but on the eastern side. So as it crosses over the peninsula, she's on the other side, and even there, you know,
Yep.
I don't want to frighten her more than she needs to be frightened, but they're scared.
Yeah. Yeah, it is scary. And the some of the worst parts of this is a lot of this probably would have been preventable, this extremes in the weather, if many years ago we had listened to the scientists instead of being lied to by politicians.
Yeah.
Which is the other part of the horrible stories every day. You get this people lying about things that ends up having consequences that can hurt people.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah, and so in that way, it bends our contemporary lives around to make the ancient words of Scripture a little more relevant, you know, because some of how they lived and the defenselessness of the rise and fall of governments and the brutality, at least as I hear it, I don't know how people survived in the ancient times at all, but they did. But in the surviving of it, we have the record of their fears and their worries. And the biggest thing you hear about, we're going to hear it again tonight, is that the most damning thing about life is to have people present who lie all the time.
Yeah.
And listen, I get frustrated. A lot of times now I just am silent. I used to speak up a lot more than I did, but mostly it's because I got schooled by a friend of mine who said, you know, Lou, look at what you're doing. You're not convincing anybody. You know, if you're going to talk in a way that might actually change someone's mind. But it's not, it's just making you angry. You know, it's just getting you stirred up so you're useless. And so, but the one thing that if I ruled the world in terms of our debate today, I would say we need to stop arguing about whether there is global warming. It's here, but the argument that is there is what's causing it.
Right.
We disagree fundamentally about what is causing it. And, you know, there are people who want to sound wiser and less reactive, who say, well, you know, the earth warms and then it cools and it's part of its natural life cycle. And so even with really outrageous storms coming and the melting of the polar ice cap and, you know, the warming of the oceans, you get these people who want to sound like they're calm and they're wise, and they say, well, this is nature doing what nature does. And of course, in the background are a growing number of scientists who believe, no, this isn't nature doing what nature does. This is human beings. We have an incredible stamp on the balance of nature. Human beings are affecting the balance of nature. Maybe the earth has warmed, but we've turned the burner up on it on the gas stove. We've accelerated it. And then the futile question is, other people in this big debate say, yeah, there's nothing you can do about it anyway. There's nothing you can do. Which I don't believe.
There's lots of things we could be doing that we don't do because it's too expensive, or, you know, people are trying to pull the wool over your eyes, or they say, you know, there's nothing we can do. I don't believe that either, you know, but.
I don't either. I also, and hi, Debbie. I also don't believe that it's too expensive. I believe it's not a price that someone wants to pay because they want to direct the funds elsewhere. So it's all choices, but it's not choices of which we have control over.
I agree. I think you're right. That's absolutely. And then they complain about the cost, but the cost of not doing anything, as we can see, is horribly high. Look at all the, all these catastrophes are costing people everything they own and then some. And how is that not costly? It's, I don't know.
And as we've read and we see, everything is projected. I'm sure it has been projected and presented. It has been put on the back burner because of their choices, not ours.
Right.
We get handed down what they want us to hear.
And
That is really upsetting. Yeah.
And that's where it links into this. I mean, it's just like the 5th, 6th, maybe the 7th Psalm, where the writer of the Psalm says he's crying out to God for a level of suffering that's happening. And predominantly, the cause of the suffering is people who are fabricating lies. People who are telling lies. They are deceiving and in a convincing way, and the world is buying up the lie, and the psalmist sees destruction ahead. Like, because of the lies. And then, I think we can get on our moral high box here and judge the psalmists, because what the psalmists do then is they cry out to God and they say, kill these guys, wipe them out. You've got to stop this. You have to end this, because all of us are going to suffer from this. You have to get rid of these horrible liars who are destroying our life. And I mean, I don't know. I sometimes just feel like a little tiny person in the effects of decisions that are made for me and by me. I buy into the commercialism, I buy into the stories, and because it's too big for me to think critically about. I don't know. I don't know. But this storm, following the one that was just last week,
Right.
I mean, I guess we'll see what comes when it finally arrives on land, and see what devastation and destruction it does. But I don't know, there's just too many people that we're willing to dismiss it and just say, well, there was a similar large storm back in 1929 too,
Right. Right.
We're just, don't get reactionary now. Don't start eliminating fossil fuels.
I really hope people take this forecast seriously and evacuate if they can, nothing materialistic is worth staying for. You can pick up the pieces when it's over.
Yeah, it's true, and people do stay, but they were saying,
Don't risk your life for it.
No, don't risk your life for this. I mean, especially, you look at how many people died and drowned a week and a half ago. I mean, I think about all the ways I don't want to die. I don't want to die drowning inside my car.
No.
Covered by mud. They don't even know how many bodies they haven't even recovered yet. But then again, we see this devastation in eastern North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, or western Tennessee, and I think it only brings us up to what happens in what we call the third world countries when these big events happen, and we let the numbers go flying by us, 3,000 people died. Tsunamis came, and droughts. You look at, the effect of drought that's happening. And it always seems unfair because by our economy, we're somewhat protected and insulated from the worst effects of what can happen. And then our ears get stopped up to not even really hear what it's like for a lot of people.
Right.
Well, let's read. Debbie, will you read for us?
Are we on 59?
We are, yes. Winner, winner.
Okay.
We are on 59.
Okay. Prayer for deliverance from enemies.
Yes.
Again.
Yes.
Sounding kind of like a one-note Johnny here.
Yeah, it's a one-note Johnny for, 20 or 30 psalms in a row, but here we go.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Deliver me from my enemies, O my God. Protect me from those who rise up against me. Deliver me from those who work evil, from the bloodthirsty. Save me. Even now they lie in wait for my life. The mighty stir up strife against me. For no transgression or sin of mine, O Lord, for no fault of mine, they run and make ready. Rouse yourself, come to my help and see. You, O Lord God of hosts, are God of Israel. Awake to punish all the nations. Bear none of those who treacherously plot evil. Each evening they come back howling like dogs and prowling about the city. There they are, bellowing with their mouths, with sharp words on their lips, for who they think will hear us. But you laugh at them, O Lord. You hold all the nations in derision. O my strength, I will watch for you. For you, O God, are my fortress. My God, in his steadfast love, will meet me. My God will let me look in triumph on my enemies. Do not kill them, or my people may forget. Make them totter by your power and bring them down. O Lord, our shield, for the sin of their mouths, the words of their lips, let them be trapped in their pride. For the cursing and lies that they utter, consume them in wrath. Consume them until they are no more. Then it will be known to the ends of the earth that God rules over Jacob. Each evening they come back howling like dogs and prowling about the city. They roam about for food and growl if they do not get their fill. But I will sing of your might. I will sing aloud of your steadfast love in the morning. For you have been a fortress for me and a refuge in the day of my distress. O my strength, I will sing praises to you. For you, O God, are my fortress, the God who shows me steadfast love.
All right. So this is a literary device that is used a lot, in that one of the great stories from the history of the people of Israel was the story of David. David the Goliath slayer, and David the one who was anointed king while Saul was still anointed king, and things got really bad. The majority, the vast majority of the nations of the 13 tribes wanted Saul to continue as the king. But Samuel had decided no. He said God withdrew God's support, and he was propping up a puppet. And that puppet was David. But history goes on to make David the winner, not only in history, but of God's favor. So David is the favored one, according to the writers and to the history. David is the great king of all time. And so what happens is, when some of these, these dramas of life, right? We we feel like we're in a battle. We feel like we're in a, like we're just talking about this environmental. We feel like we're in a battle, and there are people on the other side. And, you know, the questions are, will we win? Will we lose? What are the, you know, consequences if we lose? They used the device of David and the well-known story of David, and then they wrote these psalms and projected them back to those times. Maybe this is what David was thinking at the time when he was fighting for his life against the majority of the Hebrew people. And it's a device. It's a device that allows the writer of the psalm to express the deep worry about the future, the deep pain of having horrible, horrible people roaming about in the world, people who are not subtle, you know, who would, you know, the population of the human nations contains some very, very violent people. And so they imagine David in this situation of trying to describe what it's like to be a person of faith in a place where lies are told and lives are lost and suffering is brought on. And how do you talk about that when you believe that God is a God of love and cares about people? What are we to pray? How are we to pray? And how are we to talk to God? And so this psalm becomes an example of one way you can talk to God about those terrible people that exist in the world. Sorry, I've got a frog in my throat. I don't know. I feel like over and over again we read these psalms and come back to the same thing. I know if Barbara was sitting here right now, she would say, well, I don't believe God relates to people in that way.
Yeah.
You know? But, I mean, at least on the surface, it still looks like that. It still looks like, sometimes for me, especially now, and I know it's situation locust, it's me writing my story onto the history of the world around me, but I feel like we are in a time where liars are winning. And I'm not talking about the election, I'm talking about liars are winning. People are buying up the lies for whatever reason. I gotta believe there's some personal gain that people feel by buying up the lies. I mean, the most recent of which is so tragic for me because I worked years ago in the Floyd disaster in New Jersey, and I know what it's like when you're trying to recover from a disaster and homes are destroyed and the streets are lined with people's personal possessions and no one knows whether their job still exists and their cars are gone. And then in the middle of all that, you have people who are coming around and they're making up stories. They're telling disaster stories about, you know, people that are abusing the money, and I mean, it's like, you know, the natural disaster was only the first wave. Then there's the disaster of our inability as human beings to take care of each other. And the lies, oh my goodness, the lies were outrageous about what was actually happening. And I don't know why they were told, but I knew because I was involved in the Unmet Needs Committee, where the cooperation was incredible in central New Jersey for meeting the needs of people. In the end, we put 278 families back in their house fully restored. But the process of getting there was like cutting through a deluge of lies and half-truths and people who were perverting the stories and telling stories about good people as if they were bad people. And, oh my goodness, it just, I don't know. And so I'll get together a prayer committee, and we can all get together and have a meeting, and we'll do what the psalmist did, and we'll lay our complaints in front of God and say,
Kind of froze.
yeah, you're frozen. I'm frozen. You're moving now. I see you. I mean, to just say to God, what's going on? Are you in this or not? Are you involved in this? Does evil just have its way until it runs out of gas or something? Is there no checks on the power of evil that are built into the system? And the psalmist asks those questions. In fact, one of my favorite parts of this psalm is in verse, it can be verse 4 or verse 5. There is no waywardness on my part, but they run and they prepare to attack. In this phrase, rouse yourself. This is addressed to God. Rouse yourself to meet me and see for yourself. And Brueggemann again makes a big deal of the fact that the psalmist, the writer of the Psalms, is always trying to wake God up. Wake God up. You got to rouse yourself. Get up. What are you sleeping in this morning? Do you not see what is happening here? Will you see it? Will you see it and address it or not?
Kind of, that's what it feels like now with the politics, with the storms, with liars, with all the things that have been happening in the last few weeks. It does seem like God's sleeping. Why are you letting all this evil run amok? But I think we're letting it happen. We are not. I think a lot of people will say, well, somebody else will take care of that. I'm going to sit back and do, I have other things on my mind, and I can't get involved in that. If we become complacent about evil, then why are we blaming God for that?
Yeah, I don't know. I agree. I think we become complacent. But I was thinking as I was riding in my car yesterday, so this is the way my mind wanders to some of these things. Like here's what I know in my head. Here's what I know. I know that a tremendous amount of the damage that is being done to the earth presently is the result of big populations of human beings eating beef. I'm one of them. I like steak. I like burgers. But I'm riding along in my car and I'm thinking to myself, have you paid attention to the devastation that is happening to the planet because of raising beef? The gas that is given off from these massive herds of cattle, the destruction of forests for the purpose of grazing, the fact that beef is actually not really good for you.
Right.
And I know all of this. I know. God help me. I know this is true. But I still eat beef.
Where's the beef?
Where's the beef?
You know what? It's gotten so expensive that pretty much by default, a lot of people are eating a lot less beef. But that's a good thing, I think.
I think it is too. I think it is too.
I love a good steak. I really do. I make it a real special thing every once in a while. But how do we? I don't know.
I think it goes to that thing of saying, well, you know what? Let somebody else deal with this. I'm going to keep eating steak until it's not available, and then I won't complain too much. I'll just go, hey, I remember when we used to eat that delicious steak. But the earth is better for it now. I try to make sense out of it in a way that helps me to see I don't have the luxury of the psalmist who points to other people as the ones who are the terrible ones, that are doing terrible things.
And I think, it's David's story that gets put front and center here. What about Saul's story?
Yeah.
He thought he was blessed by God as well. Who says this upstart David now gets, to tell his story, and that's the one that's going to come down through history? We're supposed to side now with David? You kind of have to, history gets written by the guy who wins, right? So
Yeah, well, especially this in this case, 100%. Because, Saul was chosen to be king, but, I mean, it's always a little bit of a problem when the ethos of the time is that God chooses the king,
right.
So,
Yeah.
who chooses the one that speaks for God? So Samuel speaks for God, right? Samuel is God's voice. But obviously, as an adult today, I reread the story, and my argument is with Samuel. What is your problem? You were given a sign, evidently, that Saul was to be anointed king, and you anointed him king. And then, because he went into battle without you being there to say the prayer, you thought he was a little too arrogant. And the contemporary history will tell you that what Samuel didn't like, and what some of the people didn't like about Saul, was they thought he was going to be a great warrior. He was a giant. He was like 6'9". And they looked at him and they went, man, there's a guy to lead us. And he didn't really want to go to war. He thought maybe, living peaceably on the earth and being God's blessing, that might be a better way. And so Samuel, who's as bloodthirsty as the Ayatollah was, Samuel is convinced that God isn't involved unless there's murder and mayhem and burning of the survivors and all the rest of it. I mean, Samuel is one ruthless dude. And so he and David form this alliance, and now they're as happy as they can be. They just have to get rid of Saul. Peace-loving. Let's talk about it, Saul. Here comes Judy. Hello, Judy.
I'm so glad to get in.
Oh,
You're chasing all around, chasing screens all around.
Oh, sorry.
oh.
Anyway, I'm here. I'm glad.
Well, we're glad you're here. Now you can tell us all the answers and straighten us out.
Yeah, we're kind of running out of answers here.
Where are we? What psalm are we on?
59.
59.
Okay.
Yep,
Good.
59.
Okay.
One more complaint that God seems to be sleeping.
I think we've decided there's a lot of liars in the world back then and now.
Yeah.
So would they just wear different costumes and have different language, right? And gestures. Yeah.
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 And guess
This-
what? The liars seem to have an advantage in the world back then and now.
Yeah. And they just have different names, that's all. Yeah. Right. Well, they have one very common name, but yeah.
Well, I like the graphicness of this Psalter. He really doesn't like liars. He calls them ravenous dogs. And he imagines them running around in the community, drooling from the destruction they're doing with their tongues and their mouths. And then they come back at night. They evidently don't sleep. And they come back and they huddle up over a fireplace thinking about what lies they will tell tomorrow and what destruction they will win with, quote, the sins of their mouths and the words of their lips and their arrogance. Let them be snared by their arrogance for the curses and lies that they utter. And I like the anger that is obvious in the author when he says, I would want you to kill them, God. I want you to kill them, but I don't want you to kill them fast. I want you to I want you to take your time. Kill them really slowly. Otherwise, you'll kill them, they'll be gone, and then people will forget the lessons that would be learned about why you should not lie like this and deceive the people. So I want them to die very slowly.
Okay,
Yeah, I like it. I can live with that.
yeah. Yeah, right up to modern times. Right.
In wrath, put an end to them. But put an end to them so that they are no more, and let them know to the ends of the earth that God rules over the people. Yeah. Yeah. Just hope that God will get awake and see what's happening.
Yeah. Like today, too.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a worrier. I've owned up to that before. I try not to let worry overwhelm my faith, but I'm a worrier. I'm a worrier if liars win. If liars win, I've read about times in histories where liars win and they rise to power. And,
That's right.
the suffering isn't light or easy. People are put to death, and
Yeah.
prophets, you can translate that into the press. There are still countries today where journalists who speak the truth are executed.
That's right.
They're executed. And the people live in the poison of the darkness that is created by people who control what they believe is the truth.
Right.
And I feel it's knocking at our door.
I know.
I feel the dogs barking at my feet.
Yeah. And in a free society, you wonder, how can these people enable, support, believe? Well, I guess, what was it Hitler said? The big lie, if you say it often enough, people will believe you. And maybe that is absolutely true, because he has, been saying what he's saying for quite a while, so that it's normalized now.
Yeah.
The danger. Yeah. Yeah.
The thing that's really scary this week, it just seems to keep increasing, the violent rhetoric. This week it was the genes of the people he doesn't like are infecting our country.
Yeah.
And that's pure Hitler.
Yes.
That is. That's like, it is. I remember first learning about, a guy in history who thought, that there was a superior race, and that they had a genetic structure that was superior, and that everybody else should be put to death. I remember reading about that in history, 8th grade, 9th grade, and thinking, how crazy is that? I mean, that's ridiculous. And now here it is in our time.
In our country. And there was a big page, full page in the Times, and maybe you guys had seen it, of the people that he would and will, whatever, put into jail.
Right.
And did you see it? It was almost everybody that disagrees with him. Must have been 50 people, maybe more. Probably.
Politicians,
Yeah, a journalist.
journalists,
Comedians.
authors,
Yeah, late night
celebrities.
That's right. Everybody.
I mean,
I keep thinking we should have a plan B, a government in exile. We should have some kind of a plan B, in case he gets in.
Well,
But how different is that from some of the passages we have read that say, keep the foreigner out, do not do not get together with the foreigners. They'll,
Well, they
taint
pollute, yeah,
the
they,
blood of, they
they-
pretty much say the same
yeah,
thing.
they pollute your faith. They
Yeah.
lead you into a polluted way of seeing God and life and all the rest of it, so have nothing to do with them. Don't let your daughters marry their sons. Don't let, no intermarriage. There should be no interreaction. And all of that, to me, all of that is a growth out of the dictator that was King David.
Yeah.
It comes about from seeking to keep the people pure. Moses was responsible for a lot of that.
Right? This is not a new idea. It seems humankind
That's
can't
right.
get over this idea that some people are not to be trusted or worthy of, getting next to, or we shouldn't pay any attention to those people. And if they bother us, slaughter them.
That's right.
It's awful. This is
Yeah.
It is.
so really disappointing that it's not new and it's still with us.
Right.
And,
Right.
and people still listen to
Right.
people who do these things.
Yep. And again, if you look behind the way the story was told to us about Egypt and about the plight of the people in Egypt, and then Moses goes down, and says, "Let my people go," and then my people, who are my people? And historians will tell you that if the counting of history is correct, the children, Joseph in the coat of many colors, and his brothers, and Abraham, when they arrived in Egypt, when they got there, 400 years is the way the Bible counts the time, 400 years with 5 generations in each year. By the time Moses arrives, except for, a Hebrew kind of weave of cloth, nobody knew who was who. There was no pure race of the people of God. They were slaves. They intermarried. They didn't, they had no identity. They had forgotten their stories. Many of them didn't even know the story of Abraham and Sarah. They knew nothing about it. And so, what is it that creates the people of God? Moses says, "You're part of my people if you put the blood on the lintel of your house. And if you don't know this ritual, ask somebody." And so, that night of the Passover, a nation is created. But it is created out of diaspora of all the slave communities that Egypt had collected over the years of the pharaohs. There was no purity. There was nothing. So the only thing that linked those people to each other was faith in a God who they believed was delivering them. And their willingness to march out into the desert to risk starving or dying of hunger and thirst. And that, the rest of Scripture, the prophets say, that's what created them as a people. That's what made of them a family. That they had that in common. And I think about that as the same way in the history of the United States. I see, they're talking about migrants, right? Migrants, as if there are Americans and then there are migrants. You can't throw a stone in the United States and not hit a migrant. It's just a matter of which time you're talking about. This is a nation, in its best telling of its history, understands that we are not a race of people. We're not. We never were. We are the result of family-making experiences. Sometimes we hated other members of our family and enslaved them, but we seem to be trying to get over some of that, and that we are a very diverse group of people. But now, all of a sudden, that group of people is going to be contaminating our gene pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
And the history, history books say we are a nation of immigrants.
Immigrants.
And,
That's right.
yeah, a nation of immigrants. And then the bizarreness, Byzantine, the thinking that, the hypocrisy of these men whose wives are all immigrants.
Right, I know, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Daddy Fred was an immigrant. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, I was just reading an article in National Geographic online, and it was a retelling of the lost colony of Roanoke, and they seem to have found some more clues as to what might have happened to the people, and they were Spanish. No, those were English settlers. I'm getting everybody mixed up now. The English, and it was in the 1500s. I forget exactly what the dates were, but eventually the colony was not able to survive where they originally landed, and they said if they were going to move, they would leave a clue. So the people who were coming to relieve them on another voyage did find some clues, and we know that because they left behind written records in England that pointed towards that. And they said the first white woman born in the United States, Virginia Dare, down in North Carolina, they said she might have survived, and they had some kind of, they're working to try and prove it. But they think that what happened to them is they did survive. They just became part of the Indian colony that was there. The native peoples adopted them, and they depended on each other for survival.
Yeah.
So right there, you don't have pure people. It's like you didn't even get past one generation, and you're already, mixing the bloodlines. So what ridiculous fantasy is this, that there's somewhere where there are people that are pure from the time of, Eden until now? Come on.
No. My boss at Nabisco, he was president of Nabisco, and his family's last name was Conan, and his family, most of them, founded Harvard University. Okay. I had a group of Native American women. They were clan mothers, and they were council tribal members, and they came up to Nabisco, and we had this thing on leadership, and I had asked Doug if he would speak to them, and he did. And when he finished, he said, "Is there anybody here who was Choctaw, from the Choctaw Nation?" And there was a woman, and she raised her hand, and he said, "My great-great-great-grandfather was a Choctaw." Now here is Harvard University and the Choctaw tribe, so when you look back, that's what you're saying, Debbie, there's no pure, it's all mixed. Yeah. But people don't go around, wearing badges saying, listen, don't deport all these migrants, because if you look back in your own ancestry, you might find that you were one. Yeah. So, it's amazing.
Even
And extremism too of mix. Yeah.
Yeah. But even the lie falls apart immediately, even with
Harvard
the great
University and the
perpetrator
Choctaw
of the
Nation.
lie,
Yeah.
with Hitler. Hitler himself wasn't pure German. He just wasn't. He was not Aryan.
That's right.
And yet, he's going to make the race pure. And you still have surviving clans. You have clans who put on white hoods to say we're part of a pure race, and I don't know, I want to grab a hold of them and say, what part of your brain isn't functioning?
What does that mean?
I know.
We all came out of Africa originally.
Yeah.
So we're all related.
Yeah.
Exactly. They can trace the DNA all the way back, to the Old Divide Gorge in Africa. We all came out of there. Right. But now we happen to think, oh no, this group of people over here, they're, superior to that group of
Yeah.
Did none of these people ever read the Bible? The ancient people, the ancient thinkers whose words and thoughts are inscribed and enshrined in the Bible said that all human beings find their origins in one man and one woman. Like, is that a surprise to people? Is it somehow like lost on them? Because, a lot of the Aryan people are also Christians, they're Christians. But what happened to the primal story? The primal story is that, as impossible as it seemed in a way, that Eve herself was the mother of every human being. What do you imagine? What do you think her race was? You think she was white? You think she was born white? I mean, she was just made, so she didn't have a tan.
I know.
But, you push it, you don't have to push it even more than 1 or 2 inches deep below the surface, and it all falls apart. It just falls apart.
Yeah.
And here we are, people of many races, with, I remember reading in one of the books on civilization that there are, along the way in our history, there are things that happen that change the whole course of human history. And one of the most dramatic changes of the course of human history was the domestication of the donkey. That when the donkey was domesticated, it was the first time that any person from one village could travel more than a day's journey because they could bring food and water with them. And it began what now is globalization of the whole world. That it started with this event, this donkey, and hey, we can ride on this donkey, and this donkey can carry us further than our legs will carry us. And so commerce was born because a village that had a lot of banana trees could now sell those bananas over the hill and over 2 days' journey away, and it changed the whole experience of civilization, the whole thing. But it seems to me there are still pockets of us humans who want to go back. we want to go back to a time where we're the only ones on the planet, that we're the only ones. Our language is the only language that is spoken. The way our culture is the only.
When was that? That was never.
I know, it's true, it's never. I mean, the ancients even, they were fascinated by the variety of languages, because what they were most surprised about was they got on their donkey and they rode over the mountain, and when they went over the mountain, the people there had a language, but it wasn't theirs. Mm-hmm. And so you have the story of the Tower of Babel. That somehow God on purpose confused the languages of the people so that, again, my mind goes immediately to my Old Testament professor who said that the Tower of Babel says that human beings were cooperating together when they had one language, and they were using it to devise evil. And so the languages were confused. And now, in the world we live in, there is, again, a language that every culture speaks in the world. And it's the language of binary, of 1 and 0, which is the language of computers. My computer can talk to anybody in the world. And anybody in the world's computer can talk to mine. And so, for the ancients, for the very ancient wise ones that we look to when we read the Hebrew scriptures, for them...
You froze.
Yeah.
No.
Am I still frozen now?
You're frozen.
Still?
Mm.
Hello? Hello? Let me know when I'm moving again.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear
The
me?
computer didn't like what he was saying.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's it.
Your
froze.
computer is rebelling against what you're saying.
That's exactly right. That is
I
exactly
heard
what's
you.
happening.
Right.
I'm exposing...
I think he's frozen again.
Oh my goodness. Am I moving again now?
Not completely normally. No. You're still...
Yeah. A little still.
Intermittent movements.
Yeah. But can you hear me? Is my voice
Yes.
broken up too?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So then just close your eyes and ignore what you see. But the point is, I know this is like sort of fanatical or fanciful thinking, but, you know, this is what we need to come to terms with, is that from the beginning of time, this issue of trying to find within the human community one specialized group of people who would ultimately rule all the world.
You know, now they are finding that not only human beings, but there are certain segments, mostly of Northern Europeans, that carry the genes of Neanderthals, that we carry genes of animal, you know, not Homo sapiens, but people, ancient people, even before, you know,
That's
the
right.
human beings we know now. So I find that fascinating, and they can pick out certain traits that were passed from Neanderthals to modern, it's mostly Northern European people. So it's like, we were intermingling way before, I mean, you know, this is crazy to think that we're, you know, so exclusive.
Yeah.
It's pride taken to the nth degree, you know.
I think
Really?
I think I've met those Neanderthal people. I think
Well, they weren't all bad either. They were finding some traits that were pretty good. So
I don't know. Sometimes the caveman theory seems to be alive and well. You know?
Flintstones.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not so exclusive. Where do we get this false pride that, you know, oh, we're better than everybody else? Oof. I don't know. But the Bible is full of those stories too. And generally, they're despised. Those people that are arrogant and, you know, they're to be despised. Why don't we remember that?
Yeah.
Well, and there's, you know, just a severe history of tribalism. You know, tribalism among human beings is shared in you know, chickens and all kind, like the wolf packs and all the rest of it. We share that. We share that with a lot of the creation of human life. I was thinking of another one of those things that happened in history, which changed the face of the world, changed the face, and one of them was the discovery of coffee as a drink. That they show that the frequency of drinking coffee it became very popular in England and throughout Europe in coffee shops, was actually the spark that started the Enlightenment.
I believe that.
Yep.
Coffee's good.
Yeah, the stimulation of the brain, which came from coffee, started the kind of thinking that has led us to the Industrial Revolution and all the things now, some of which we curse because we've done ourselves in almost, but that that one thing, that one experience of coffee had on the human brain.
It's why God put coffee bars in bookstores. There you go.
It's genius. It's just genius.
That was God.
It's, you know, and caffeine. Caffeine is a drug that, you know, it became very domesticated. It's very common. I mean, you know, go in the grocery store now, they got a whole aisle of different varieties of coffee. It changed the world.
Right.
It had a profound effect on our thinking ability. After the dawn of coffee in European society and in the world, some of the greatest inventions, we call them, actually came into our lives. But it didn't change the fact that in many ways we're still beasts. You know, we still have the tribalism. We still have the ability for our minds. I mean, I'm sure that people that study the human brain now know more about this. They know what are these triggers that happen inside of us that shut off our rational thinking and have us join in mob behavior.
Yeah. And it is the mob.
I mean, I watch, sometimes you still see snippets of the revolution, the rebellion that happened on January 6th, and you can watch, all the cameras are on the backs of these people, so you see them, they're rushed. And I look at them and I go, what were you thinking? What was going through your head? You know, you're beating a police officer. What? But, I don't know, I'm not a big believer in demons and the devil and that, you know, but I do believe that sometimes we get possessed, we get taken over by ideas and thoughts, and we lose our better selves. And we become like these dogs of this song. We go roaming about.
Very dangerous.
And the violence that we commit
Yeah.
is not physical violence, and that's in this song, it's not physical violence. It's the violence of lies and rumors that are told, that lead people
Right.
to get beaten up and, you know, thrown aside.
Right. And then that even facts no longer persuade. I was reading that, you guys probably saw it, that Trump has called Putin several times. Yeah, and that he sent him a couple of packages of COVID testers.
Yeah,
Yeah, when we couldn't get them, he's sending them to Putin.
yeah.
But they're not good friends. They're not good friends. He denies it now. He denies all of this.
Oh, but he always does, yeah.
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 In Islam, one of the ideas of who ends up in heaven and who ends up in hell is it's said that most of the people in hell are there because of their tongues. And if you read this psalm, you believe it.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they go about and they tell lies, and they don't understand the damage that it's done. I'll tell you this story. Sometimes I think these people get tired of hearing me tell this story, but I was chosen as the community leader for flood recovery for Bound Brook, South Bound Brook, and another town across the river in central New Jersey. So we had this massive, like, let's address the needs of the families that were wiped out. 2,000 people lost their homes. We were scrambling. And people began to give money. We formed an organization. I cursed the name. I came up with the name. It was called We Will Rebuild. And, you know, it's like Elmer Fudd. You try to say it 3 times fast and you can't. So we had this unmet needs committee, and people started giving money. In particular, Presbyterians from around the world started writing big checks to us. And we got $200,000 from a church in California. We got $75,000 from here and from there. And before you knew it, through community groups and through all kinds, we had amassed a war chest of money to begin to take care of some of these unmet needs of these people. And there was a reporter from one of the small newspapers who interviewed me, and he learned about the fact that we were, you know, collecting this money to begin to buy windows and doors and houses for people and, you know, help along with the Red Cross and FEMA to restore people. So he interviewed me in my office, and he went out and he wrote an article in the Courier News in which he told a story about how the pastor at the Presbyterian Church in Bound Brook was hoarding the flood response money. And he was holding on to it for no reason at all but to control it.
Ugh.
And he put that article out in the community, and I still can't believe this happened. 3 days later, there was a massive demonstration on the front lawn of my church protesting how I was hoarding the money that belonged to the survivors of the flood.
Oh my God.
And,
wow.
and I this was all new to me. I had no idea what to do about it. But the truth is, what I was doing was, I had accepted the guidance from Red Cross and also from FEMA, which they said, be very careful when this money comes in. Do not spend it right away. You're going to need it in the end for longer-term rebuilding of people's lives. That's what I was doing. So there was this wonderful woman from National Red Cross who read the article and then came to my office. Basically, I was ready to dig a hole and die. I could not believe this was happening to me.
No.
And she said, Lou, you're going to have to develop a side of your personality which isn't developed yet. You're going to have to get out there in the public and defend yourself. You're going to have to get verbal. You're going to have to write back to the newspaper. You're going to have to speak truth to these lies, or these lies will destroy your life.
Oh, God.
And so, with her help, I wrote a press release, and we went back at them, and they had planned a second larger demonstration for the Saturday morning. And when it came right down to it, I had written and appeared in public to defend what we were doing, and on the morning that they scheduled the great big demonstration against me and my terrible hoarding of resources, on the lawn of the church that morning was just the one reporter who had first started the lie.
Wow.
Everybody else had said, oh, is that what's happened?
Huh.
I mean, and this was just a little tiny microcosm. You know, this wasn't national, this was just regional. But the ability of a person who decided to tell a lie and to tell it in a way that he thought was really, quote, the inside story. I'm going to tell you the real truth of what's going on here. And the ability to destroy everything that we were doing to try to really help families. And again,
I wonder what the motive is of these people. I mean, we know what the motive is of these, you know, greed and power and money, but what was the motive of that reporter, I wonder?
he wanted to get famous for busting open a story of, you know, people being abused and, you know, innocent people's money, you know.
Okay. He wanted to be, he wanted to have a first news breakthrough or what. Oh,
Yeah, he was cracking a big story.
okay. That was his motive, yeah. Incredible.
All right, well, I think we've dealt liars and cheaters a pretty good hand tonight.
Yes.
3 times in my translation, in the middle of all the complaining and the fighting and the resisting and the telling of the story, God will come to meet me with his loyal love is the translation that comes out of Hebrew here. 3 times the psalmist says, in the middle of all the chaos and the terrible wandering around, the people destroying people, God meets the psalter with loyal love. And the commentators make a big deal out of that thing, that the important point is people who try to destroy you with lies and all the rest of it, God is not swayed. God's love is loyal, faithful, is not determined by the liars and the cheaters who go out into the world and tell false stories, but that God, in fact, the last sentence of the psalm is, "Oh, my strength, I will praise you, I will give praise to you, for you, O God, are my bulwark, O God of my loyal love." And the commentator says that when Martin Luther wrote the hymn, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," it was these verses at the end of this psalm. God is a bulwark and my strength, a present help in the time of trouble. So in the end, the psalter, although looking for a more graphic kind of vindication in life, falls literally into the arms of God, who knows the truth. And that's the comfort that is given.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we can rest in that, right? That the truth will win out, no matter what happens this month, or next month. You know, what's that, what's the, in that song, His truth is marching on?
Oh, yeah.
You know, there is a thing that is truth, and it's not my truth or your truth, it is the truth. And it insists on its way in the world. I just hope it comes quickly.
I do too. I'm in for that. Thank you, Lou. Nice.
Amen.
Okay, thank you, everybody else. Just
Right.
remember Barbara in your prayers tonight. She's really not feeling well, so.
What's happening with Barbara? I was gonna ask.
I don't really want to say it, just this publicly, but just know she's not feeling well.
Okay,
But I hope she'll be feeling better. With a one night's rest, she might very well be, so.
good.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night,
Have a great evening.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good
Night.
night. Good night, everyone. I hope you had a chance to listen.